The class was amazing to give us the structure, but we wouldn't, I don't think, be where we are in terms of just all of the things we're putting in place to drive that success without our coach. If we hadn't then said, you know what, this was great, but unless we continue to have somebody helping us on a consistent basis, we're going to get buried in our own work and our own client stuff that we're not going to keep an eye on driving the business versus working in the business. And so that's been critical to the success. I can't even remember when I first encountered Vern and scaling up. It was many years ago. And I started reading some of the stuff that was out there and watching some of the stuff on YouTube, and was really excited about just the whole approach, and that there's a formula and a process for taking a company from this big to that big. Acena, at the time, I had a couple of business partners, and they had no interest. So when that fell apart and I bought them out, the first thing I did was to join the masterclass, because it'd been something I wanted to do for a really, really long time. And I just could not convince my partners that we needed to do that. It was a good thing that the split happened, because it gave us an opportunity to really dive into creating the right structure to take the company to the next level. The company split was that we just weren't aligned at all. I mean, it was just a bunch of people coming to work and doing their job, and we had reasonable process in terms of getting the work done, but there was no alignment in terms of really taking the business to another level, no real plan for it other than sell more. That resulted in, different goals and values. And so ultimately that led to us going in different directions. When I brought the new team in, the key component of that was really communication and making sure that we were aligned in what we were doing on a daily basis. And that is probably one of the biggest differences from before and after. We do an alignment survey every week. Every Thursday, everybody is expected to go on to Asana, our project management system, and fill out a form that says, are you aligned with our core values? Are you communicating well within the company? Do you feel like people can, have your back when you can't finish something? Do they take care of things without you having to tell them to, because they know they need your help? I think there's 5 questions that we go through, and we rate that every week. It's one of our KPIs. And if there's an issue, I want to know about it now versus creating, this is our last iteration, had silos. We had people that were not talking. They were just, within smaller groups. And so we've really, as part of our journey, made communication a significant front level issue to make sure that we're always communicating. And within our management team, our leadership team, really pushing each other to be vocal. When we sit down in a leadership meeting, while I'm the founder and the president, everybody knows that they're expected to disagree. And if they're not, we have a problem. That has taken a long time, right? It's taken us a long time to get people comfortable with that. But they have no problem pushing back on me anymore, which is really a good thing. The R&D credit, which has been around for a really long time, hasn't changed. But in the last 2 years, there's a change in the way that you have to account for your research and development costs. So prior to 2022, you would expense them just like you expense everything as a business expense. And so it lowers your taxable income. If I've got $1 million of R&D expenses, that lowers my taxable income by $1 million. Well, starting in 2022, that has to be capitalized to your balance sheet, which simply means it comes off of your income statement, and then you amortize it over 60 months, which means you take a little bit of that expense onto your income statement over 5 years. Okay, so think about that. $1 million of expense is no longer an expense, which means my taxable income goes up by $1 million, which means I'm paying tax at a federal level in the United States, somewhere, if you're a flow through, which is a lot of our clients, in the 30 to 40% range, federal and state combined. So $1 million of R&D expenses equates to $400,000 of additional tax. You would expect that to absolutely kill our research and development business, right? Because who's going to take the credit if they have to capitalize these expenses? Well, capitalization is a requirement, whether you take the credit or not. That's the way the law is written. So for people that have been taking the credit, they kind of have to continue to take the credit. Might as well, because it helps mitigate some of that damage. Not all of it. They still have to pay more tax, but they kind of have to do the work. I don't know why, but we've identified like 10 new clients this year, and we shouldn't be getting any new R&D clients. And we're not doing anything yet on the marketing side that's any different than we've ever done, but we're getting more client referrals and more referrals from CPA firms. And while we've been implementing the scaling up methodologies point to a lot of things that we're doing externally differently, we haven't changed marketing at all, but somehow, some way, we're getting new business coming in and we shouldn't be right now. I've got 10 studies that are sitting in the wings waiting for Congress to make their change for companies that have never taken the credit that they're going to pull the trigger, which is significant for us in terms of additional revenue. And yet we're still doing okay because we've got other new clients that have taken the credit but have come over to us from other firms. My former partners didn't really believe in tracking anything. So when I tried to throw KPIs in, there was just no interest in tracking them. So we didn't have any. Today, we've got 2 main priorities that we're working through, and those have a lot of sub KPIs underneath them that we're driving. We had our huddle this morning, and I think out of, let me take a quick look. I want to say we've got probably tracking about 15 different things. Most everything is green. Our alignment survey is at 91 out of 100, which is kind of cool. I think what this has done is it's really put the whole KPI process has really put a focus on executing the right things in order to drive the business. So I'll give you another example. Prior iteration, it would take us sometimes 6 months to get a final report out. Today, we have a KPI that says the final report's going to go out within 30 days. And then we back that up with some steps above that to say, how do we get this out in 30 days? Well, the write-ups have to be done on the projects by this date. So we're going to make sure that after the interview, they're done within 10 days. And if we get final information from the client, it's done within 2 weeks. So the team has some measurable goals that they are focused on to say, if I want my chart in a line to be green, I have to hit these things. Versus the old team was, well, we'll get it done when we get it done. And so there's a much more sense of urgency that's been put in place through the scaling up methodology. With my former partners, we would have a partner meeting once a week, and nothing was more than Randy communicating what was going on at the business, and there wasn't a lot of communication. Today, we've got our daily huddles as a group. We've got our leadership team that meets once a week as well as monthly, and we have our quarterly meetings as well. So we've really put in all of the components for communication to make sure all of that's in place. Ownership from the rest of my leadership team is skyrocketed relative to where it was. Everybody's got their area of responsibility that they are working in and making sure that they're taking care of it and getting it done. And at the same time, recognizing that the discussions we have are company-wide versus on a more limited basis. With only 8 people, you wear a lot of different hats, right? My operations coordinator also wears the IT hat, and she also wears the HR hat. And I don't even want to tell you how many hats I have in my drawer that I got to put on. And so, but everybody's taken that and made it their own, right? They've really, like our ops person, I put her through the top grading class, the 2-day class, and she came back so excited and so fired up and ready to change the world. And it was so cool to see her get so engaged in that. And she's also responsible for Align for us, the software program that we use that is through you guys. And she got picked up to be one of, I don't know what you call it, some sort of a seminar where she was one of the 2 subject matter experts on Align. Which was really, she was, again, just to be asked to do that, she was super excited. So from a leadership perspective, people are taking their areas of responsibility and owning them, wanting to do more with them, which is gratifying for me as the owner. So the masterclass was great. I put the entire company in. I think we were 6 people when we did that. And it wasn't a question. It was, we're going to do this and we're all going to embrace this philosophy. And I don't want to be one guy and then try to bring this to you guys. I want you guys to breathe it. I want you to learn it and live it. And so the class was critical in terms of getting everybody on the same page and more importantly, the why. Because if they didn't understand the why behind it, then the what and the how weren't going to make any difference at all. For our monthly meetings for both sales and for a leadership team, we'll go back into the videos that you guys have on the library, and I'll grab one of them to talk about, and we'll go through and we'll watch all of it. That'll be our hour and a half, whatever it is to get through the videos. And I think that's really helped people in terms of, again, if our coach says this is the direction we're going, we need to do, that provides a lot of backup and more why this is important, because it's a lot more detailed. And so that's been critical in terms of just follow-up. This is probably a good time to mention, the class was amazing to give us the structure, but we wouldn't, I don't think, be where we are in terms of just all of the things we're putting in place to drive that success without our coach. If we hadn't then said, you know what, this was great, but unless we continue to have somebody helping us on a consistent basis, we're going to get buried in our own work and our own client stuff that we're not going to keep an eye on driving, the business versus working in the business. And so that's been critical to the success. The sessions that we did online with the coach were really good, and we got to actually create some online relationships with the other people from the class, which was really fantastic. So the relationships from the class were really good, and they were important in terms of hearing what other people were doing. But like having a coach on board, I think it'll be more impactful for me. I have enjoyed everything so far, and I can see how the components that we're putting in place are going to have the impact that we're looking for. We're enjoying the ride, to me, which is really important. That I tell our coach literally after every time we meet with him that I feel like I'm drinking from a fire hose, because there's so much. And if you try to do all of it at once, nothing's going to work. And so taking these bite-sized pieces through the scaling up process have been really important for us. But does it justify the cost? Absolutely. We've got 4 pieces. We go around the horn, so that and every month we change the order. So we'll set an order for everybody for the month, and then at the beginning of the month it gets shuffled. We go through what's happening today. We go through our KPIs. We go through most important thing, and then our stucks. We've done a pretty good job of keeping it to 15 to 20 minutes. Occasionally, I'll go off on a tangent and want to communicate something that I think is important. But for the most part, if there's something that requires a little bit more discussion, we'll take it offline and it'll get talked about after the fact. But it's been helpful. When we started them, we had people that would, they would be like this. And when everything would go silent, they would look at the list to see if it was their turn yet. And so recognizing when you've got everybody on camera and you can see them going like this, they're looking at their phone, or they're not paying attention, or they're going like this, versus looking at the camera. So we called them on it. And it started out with hey, you know what? We need you paying attention to what's going on. And we need everybody's focus here on the meeting. And I'm not calling anybody specifically out today. I'm just going to tell you that we know when you're looking at your phone, and we need you focused here. And magically, we've got everybody focused on the meetings now. I think the best advice that I could give would be, 1, stop trying to do it yourself, because it's not going to work. And the second would be, trust your team to be involved. But the only way that's going to happen is if you, 1, are open with them, and 2, you involve them as a peer rather than as a subordinate, and 3, you have to make it worth their while, both from a growth perspective and a financial perspective. They should share in that. They're building your company for you. You put all those things together, you throw the scaling up methodology on top of that. Everyone is committed. You have the right A players and the right seats on the bus. Will absolutely make an impactful difference. We're pretty aggressive with our goals this year. We've got a 40% bump in revenue. So we've got some pretty high aspirations for growing this. Develop the framework to create a lot of smaller teams. One of the things that I think I'm taking away from the scaling up methodology is that the more people that you add, right, communication becomes not arithmetically more difficult. It becomes, the difficulty in communicating multiplies, right? It's exponential. And so if you manage the team size, you can manage that communication. So our focus as we grow is going to be smaller cells, or smaller squads, if you will, of 6 to 8 people that the studies they work on will be within their group. And yet we'll have all the same processes. People from each group will work together to make sure that they're sharing information and sharing ideas, and we'll be following the same processes. And that whole process of keeping sort of a smaller group, yet a group that comes together on a consistent basis to make sure we're all aligned, I think is something that I would not have thought of were it not for the scaling up process. So our growth and our goals are going to be to create a structure that doesn't exist in our industry. Nobody's doing it like this. I'm excited to see if it works. We don't know if it will or not, but conceptually, my team loved the idea, and I think we're all on board in terms of creating that team of teams and then smaller groups around that are committed to each other and loyal to each other, as well as being part of the bigger company.